a true work of art, and we don't see a lot of films that live up to, the words true work of art these days.
What are your 10 favorite movies?
My 10 favorite movies is an impossible question. And I would be like I would probably short circuit. I will tell you what one of my all-time favorite independent films is, which is the original Slacker, directed by Richard Linklater. That movie completely breaks your standard mold of a traditional storytelling, with 3-act structure. It's a day in the life of Austin, Texas, where we meet all types of people in all walks of life, and they kind of have intersecting lives. Each story kind of crosses over into the next, and it's beautiful and absolutely sweet and inspiring. That would be in my top 10 list. Another film would be 2001: A Space Odyssey, directed by Stanley Kubrick, is probably, for me, a perfect film in the sense that I saw it when I was 5 years old as a kid, and it blew my mind, and I probably watch it every few weeks. And by that I mean I keep it on in the background while I'm working on other things, but 2001: A Space Odyssey is so inspiring, is so beautiful, and then it's a true work of art, and we don't see a lot of films that live up to the words true work of art these days. And I tend to notice something new about it every time I see it. There's something fascinating about that film. And just the artistry, the cinematography, the way that these special effects in that film stand up to today. There was never a special edition of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Although, pro tip, if you get the film on iTunes, they will allow you to watch the film with the original 1968 theatrical sound mix, which I strongly recommend. But that film inspires me. I kind of turn inward whenever I watch that film and think about life and death and the cosmos and the unknown and all the unanswerable questions that that religion attempts to answer for us, that are truly unanswerable only perhaps by faith. And that film asks those questions without providing an answer, which I think is terrifying. So I love that movie. The original Star Wars also has to be on that list, along with The Empire Strikes Back, because at the time that they were made, when you go back to filmmaking in the 1970s, those movies were dark. Another favorite I would add to the list, I'm actually going to get to the list, is Taxi Driver by Martin Scorsese. And when you look at the films that were being made at the time in the 1970s, they were very dark. The themes were, this is a post-Nixon era when, really it was in the shadow of all the, cultural upheaval of the 1960s, and the 70s were the hangover from that. And still films were very dark, even in the realm of, science fiction. And George Lucas set out to kind of flip that and say, I'm going to make a fairy tale for kids because there are no heroes in movies today. At least that's what he thought in the early 70s when he first began his journey of writing the original Star Wars film. So that one just stands out. And when I say the original Star Wars, the original cut that was theatrically released on May 25th, 1977, which I saw in a theater just a few days later, that original cut is just remarkable. And famously, George Lucas did continue to cut even after it was only released on about, a dozen screens initially. And The Empire Strikes Back just sort of flipped that. Interestingly, when George Lucas set about working on the story for The Empire Strikes Back and determined that his heavy, which was considered to be, in the initial writing of Star Wars, a small role, Darth Vader, he considered, I'm going to make this the main hero's father and present a dilemma that is, in order to, defeat the evil empire, I have to kill my own father. And he actually consulted a child psychologist to learn how this might affect children, how the idea of this might affect children. We live in a time now where pop culture is consumed so quickly that a new Disney Plus series episode will come out on a Wednesday, and we've dissected every part of it, found every Easter egg, and discussed it to death within 24 hours of its airing. And the same goes with a film. It opens on a Thursday night, Friday, and by Monday, it's all been discussed. At the time that films opened, when I was a kid and seeing movies, it was a discussion that lasted for some of these films years. Logan's Run, I would add to that list, only as I don't really have a guilty pleasure. I'm just going to say Logan's Run, because I like the ideas espoused in that film. Yes, it's shot in a shopping mall in Dallas with futuristic escalators and cheesy special effects that do not hold up. But the performance by Michael York and Jenny Agutter is just transcends the poor special effects. Also an amazing score. But that film had a profound effect on me as a kid. And I just love the ideas that were, there's a little bit of Brave New World in that, in Logan's Run, kind of borrows from that. And the theatrical version of that movie with Michael York is very different than the novel by William F. Nolan, which I read as a third grader, and it really scarred me because it's such a different, the book and the movie are so vastly different. A top 10 list for me is just like so difficult to put together. I can talk about favorite films, and those kind of change with what my current thinking is about things. So this is an impossible question, which is what I'm happy you're asking. It's really impossible for me to respond to that with a top 10. But these are some of my favorites, and the reasons they resonate for me to today.
Now, if Boyhood had come out when you were a child, do you think that would replace Slacker? Is there something nostalgic about some of the, because, for me, I loved Boyhood. It's not that I didn't like Slacker, but I thought Boyhood was a masterpiece. So do you think that would have been your one of your top 10?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I do think that many of the films from that are in my top list are movies that I saw at a younger age, because they left such a profound impression. Films like Apocalypse Now, I think, and I would also say I would add to that list Pink Flamingos, John Waters. I saw that film when I was 16 years old. I got a car not because I cared about girls. I got a car because I wanted to go to movies. So when I went to this repertory theater, did a John Waters tribute, and I saw Pink Flamingos, and it was shocking to me. I couldn't believe that people that structurally speaking, I guess it follows 3-act structure, but there's so many shocking elements in that film. In addition to Glenn Milstead, the drag queen Divine, who is probably one of the greatest drag queens in cinematic history, if that could be said. But that movie had a huge effect on me when I was 16, and then I just sort of went down a rabbit hole. I was fortunate enough to work at a video store that had some of his other films. Female Trouble might be a personal favorite because it involves Christmas Day and Cha-Cha Heels, which I thought was so weird. I mean, John Waters kind of opened my world up to like, movies don't have to be this way. They don't have to be Hollywood films. So I would say everything from like Slacker being this small indie movie made by this kid, Richard Linklater in Austin, Texas, just huge effect on me, to like John Waters, who's been a true independent his entire career, to truthfully, George Lucas is an independent filmmaker. I mean, yes, he found funding in Hollywood, but his company, Lucasfilm, was not located in Los Angeles. He relocated to Marin County in Northern California, specifically to get away from Hollywood. I don't blame him. But I would say that if there's a thread that all the films that had an effect on me is they're all by very independent-minded voices. And my fear with modern Hollywood, as it becomes more corporatized, is that those voices will be lost. And the ability to express oneself through cinema, because it's so expensive, those voices will be lost. And that's what I have a real concern with. And I see where the 70s filmmaking in Hollywood was very independently driven, with this young group of filmmakers, everyone from Spielberg to Lucas and Scorsese and Coppola, among others, young at the time. They were these new mavericks in Hollywood and truly had independent voices. I don't know if we'll see an era like that again, and it's disheartening to me. And I hope that there is some push to support these independent filmmakers. I do whatever I can with my own outlet, Film Threat. We champion these small filmmakers, but they just don't get the support from the mass media, like whatever the latest Disney, Marvel, Pixar, Star Wars thing is, which tends to consume the conversation of film for that week. And so that's kind of been my life's work through Film Thread, is just to elevate these smaller movies. I just wonder if we'll see that same era again.